I definitely am at a cemetery right now. Okay. Can you not make up your fucking mind, you useless imbecile? Should you buy a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 Mazda Speed 3? I know a lot of people out there will say, oh, you know, oh, the Gen 1's way better, don't get a Gen 2, or they'll say vice versa. As much as this is in front of me right now, I'm gonna be unbiased, right? Let's get straight into it. These cars are both so similar, right? If someone's out there saying, oh, the Gen 1's way better than the Gen 2, no, they're not. Stop being a bloody idiot, mate. Like, they're on the same chassis, they've got basically the same engine, basically the same gearbox, basically the same suspension, right? The differences, I'm going to say, are so minor. Now stay to the end for the biggest difference about the whole car. Now I think most people actually prefer a Gen 1, so I'm going to start by talking about the main advantages of a Gen 2. So yes, the Gen 2 does have a slightly different engine, slightly better. So they did improve the pistons on it a bit, right? Can you push more horsepower with the Gen 2 engine? Probably not. The design of the valve cover was better. The main advantage to the Gen 2 engine, so the timing chain, they did improve it on 2010 and up Speed 3s. Obviously all these cars have timing chain issues. Just because it's improved, they still have issues, right? But it's better. They actually improved the rust proofing on these cars. So yeah, those are the two main reasons why Gen 2 is better, engine and rust proofing. Even if it's not that noticeable, it is something, right? All the differences are very minimal. So now I think we'll go to the main reasons why the Gen 1 is better than Gen 2. That's basically just got to come down to the way they drive. Gen 1s are a bit funner, right? First difference, what everyone says, is they're lighter, about 50 kgs. You know, can you tell that if you're just daily driving it? Probably not. When you're pushing it though, however, you probably will notice it. Another thing you actually may notice is that the Gen 1s feel a bit smaller to drive, a bit more agile, a bit more lighter on their feet. Again, just like the engine, it's not a big difference. Someone just came up to me, right? And he's like, if you like and subscribe, you are a fucking gangster. You are the coolest lad alive. I'm also following on Instagram. Alright, back to it. Oh, shut up. One of the last differences about how they drive is actually the steering. Okay, so the Gen 1 has a full hydraulic system, whereas the Gen 2 is an electro-hydraulic system. They're both very good steering racks. The Gen 1, however, will feel a bit more mechanical. But yeah, like I said... Mate, that beep, if it keeps being a bitch, will end up in one of these fucking things back here, mate. Now, just like I said with the engine, is this all equates to a car that's night and day different? No. They've got to be both very fun cars to drive. The difference isn't that big, just like the engine. Now, probably a difference that is bigger than any of that is right here inside, the interior. There is this sort of stigma that the Gen 1 interior is a lot better. There is sort of the stigma that the Gen 2's interior is quite cheap, but I'm gonna be honest, right? They both just use hard plastics everywhere. I mean, sure, the Gen 1 has this nicer sort of textured stuff, and I think the design's more sporty. Yeah, if you get a Gen 2, and as long as it's got a screen in it, that's a nice interior. They actually are really nice inside for, you know, 12-year-old Mazda. But the Gen 2s usually have more tech. That being said, right, mine's a JDM import, so I've got, you know, keyless entry, keyless start, auto lights, auto wipers. You know, if you want more tech, generally the Gen 2s do have more. However, then if we look at the seats on a Gen 1 are more supportive than a Gen 2. So the interior, who's got the better one? I'm going to call it personal preference, honestly. It's all about design. You know, if you want that more modern design with more tech, Gen 2 is the way to go. If you want the more sportier design with better seats and better materials, then the Gen 1 will win that for you. Now I have got a few more differences I haven't really spoken about. First of all, we've got to talk about the gearing. So the Gen 2 has slightly longer gearing. Again, it's personal preference. Do you want the longer gears, which is better for, you know, drag racing perhaps? However, if you want, you know, the shorter gearing, that's more fun, you have to bang gears more often. It's not a big difference. Both cars have very short gearing, so. Another thing is the Gen 2's factory wheels are, I think, ½ an inch wider, and the tires are 10mm wider. That doesn't really matter because I know most of you Gen 1 guys will have 22540s on it anyway. So price, I think Gen 1s are usually like what, maybe 700 bucks cheaper maybe. I honestly don't know. Over the Gen 2s, then you are paying an extra, you know, 1,000 or whatever, but you're getting a newer car. So I guess there is one more thing, I guess, is with the Gen 2s, I guess they did sort of soften it up, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure they changed the spring rates and the damping to be a bit more comfortable. Also, these cars have this sort of SWAS system. You can think of it as boost by gear. On the Gen 2s, it was more limiting than the Gen 1s. These ones sort of just let you go at it more. I mean, it's still bad, but you can just unplug the sensor and then it's all good. So, and just back to how I said that the Gen 2s are a bit more tame than the Speed 3s. The tuning on the Gen 2s are a bit different. The turbo and power comes in a bit smoother, so they'll be, you know, I guess easy to get traction, but it just goes back to how, you know, it's a bit more tame, a bit less of an animal. But like I said before, all these differences are so tiny, like, you probably wouldn't notice unless I didn't tell you, and even if I did tell you, it'd probably take you a few days to even notice that, so it doesn't really matter. But now I think it's time for the biggest difference. My advice to you will be, open up your bloody eyes, you fuckwit. They look entirely different. Everything we've talked about so far has been quite similar. The reliability, the way they drive and all that, but shout out to my man down there. If that's you, comment down below. Now the looks, that's the biggest difference, obviously, right? Most people for the Gen 1s, they're cleaner, they look more sporty. The Gen 2 with that big goofy smile and that modern design, it can be quite polarizing. That being said, of course, if you want a car that's more in your face, obviously the Gen 2 achieves that look very well. These in stock form can look pretty boring. But yeah. Whereas, you know, the Gen 2, it's got that hood scoop, that big goofy smile. It is more in your face. It's personal preference at the end of the day. You know, one's a bit too goofy, one's a bit too boring, but I guess one technical difference you could assume on the front is that the Gen 2 does have a hood scoop, which obviously you're thinking top mount intercooler, that's what you need. However, if you look at a Gen 1, they actually do have these scoops here and here. There's a channel in there that feeds it directly onto the top mount intercooler, and that's really got to be just as efficient. However, if you look at the openings, you know, maybe it's not as big, so obviously a scoop is better. That's why, you know, in real life driving, you don't really see a difference, I'm gonna be honest. So basically what I'm saying, obviously the exterior is personal preference, it's aesthetics, right? So then coming to the end of it, what one should you buy? Now, for the Gen 2, so my main reasons why I'd buy a Gen 2 would be the better rust proofing and the slightly improved engine, especially 2010 with a better timing chain. Is the difference that big? No. Is the Gen 1 really unreliable and the Gen 2 is really reliable? Hell no, right? They're both got to be, if you don't treat it right, it will be unreliable. If you do treat it right, it will be reliable. The Gen 2 is just a bit easier on you. And obviously with the rust proofing. The Gen 1, on the other hand, will be if you want the car that is funner to drive, right? If you want the car that is a bit lighter, a bit smaller, the better steering, a bit more aggressive, then obviously you'll want the Gen 1. But again, just like the engine, it's not a big difference, right? It's like the same chassis, the same suspension. It is. So to the people saying, oh, the Gen 1's way better, or vice versa, no, one of them will be a little bit better for you. So yeah, the thing that I'd leave it down to, basically, what I'm saying, buy the one you like the look of, because that's the biggest difference. You will definitely prefer how one looks to the other, and that's a fact, right? You don't want to be driving down the road, let's say you bought a Gen 2, and then you see a Gen 1, and you just think, fuck, wish I got that, you know? So, or vice versa, obviously. They're both basically as reliable as each other. They're both basically as fun as each other. It's just they look way different. That is, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Love you.